This is episode number 178 of the Guns Magazine podcast. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast, one of the shooting world's biggest gun talk programs. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting, hunting, law enforcement, and the firearms industry. But before we get started, let's hear a word from our sponsor, 4 Patriots. Let's face it, if you don't have electricity, you're living in the Stone Age. But with the Patriot Power Sidekick from 4 Patriots, you get a solar generator that doesn't need installation. It's quick, easy, and portable on the go or even inside. The Patriot Power Sidekick solar generator is small, about the size of a lunchbox, but it's powerful. Powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, or even a mini fridge. The setup comes with a free solar panel, free shipping, a 365-day satisfaction guarantee, and, best of all, you get 10% off your first purchase by typing in the code GUNMAG at checkout. Just go to 4patriots.com and use code GUNMAG to get 10% off your first purchase of the Patriot Power Sidekick or anything else in the store. That's 4patriots.com. Use the code GUNMAG. I'd also like to share a word from our supporting sponsor, Creedmoor Sports. Creedmoor Sports is your destination for all things precision shooting. Whether you're new to the sport, an experienced target shooter, or a die-hard competitive shooter, Creedmoor Sports has what you need to take your game to the next level. Visit creedmoorsports.com. Today, we've got what I think is a pretty interesting episode. I'm talking to Trent Marsh from Spypoint Trail Cameras about using these common cameras to beef up your security around your home, barn, cabin, property, or even boat. If you're a hunter with a couple of these cameras sitting around unemployed after the season, or you're looking for a low-cost, real-time security setup, Trent has some great ideas on how to use trail cams. Now, let's talk to Trent Marsh. Good morning, Trent.
Good morning, Mr. Wheat. How are you today?
I'm glorious. Well, you are the editorial manager at a company called Spypoint that makes trail cameras, and I've used your products. They are great, and you are the guy that knows about trail cams, so I thought we would talk about it today, and we're going to take kind of a little different tact with it in the sense that I've used them for scouting, hunting purposes, and that's the primary thing people think of when they're talking about trail cams. But I think for my audience and for 9 months out of the year, using them for security, protecting your home, your farm, your whatever, is a pretty cool way to use them, even if you are a hunter and even if they are setting out there in the fall to catch that big deer or elk. The rest of the year, you can put them to good use by keeping your stuff safe. So how did you get involved in the trail camera business?
I had a job, and then I didn't have a job, and then there was another job available, and it was a friend of a friend that knew somebody at Spypoint that knew that they were looking for some marketing folks. And, you know, as happens, you never really set out to do it intentionally. Things just kind of fall into place. And I started here in January of 2019, so it's been just over 4 years now, and here I be. I've been in the industry almost 15 years now with optics and UTVs and some freelance stuff and do some writing and some consulting. So just kind of a lifer, approaching lifer at this point. And it's everybody that's not in the industry tends to think that the industry is a little bit bigger than it is, and it's really not that big of an industry. So, you know, once you're in it and kind of around it, you get a reputation for better or worse, and to whatever extent that's the truth, I've been able to stick around and been here for a few years now.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, as they say, when we were both freelancers, we did some work together, and I've gone on to Guns Magazine and you've gone on to Spypoint, and it's been very cool to see the products develop. So this isn't strictly about Spypoint, but tell us about the company.
So, Spypoint's been around for almost 20 years now, and really, they've had a lot of, we make all kinds of trail cameras, but they really kind of made their name on the cellular side of the equation. The commitment really was always to try to make that cellular trail camera technology available to any hunter that wanted to use it. I remember when cell cameras came out, and they were, wildly expensive, and the plans were wildly expensive. And it was just kind of always one of those things, because, most of my hunting is within about 20 minutes of where I live. I'm like, I would never use that. A, I couldn't afford it, and B, I don't really see the need for it. And then, you start educating yourself a little bit more and learn some more about it, and kind of see where it lands. And my first day on the job in January 2019 was launching a Link Micro, which is the most popular cellular trail camera of all time. There's not been a single unit in the industry that sold more than that Link Micro. That was my first day on the job, and it retailed at that point for $149, almost $100 cheaper than any other cellular trail camera on the market, paired with the Spypoint plans, that was, again, always part of the equation that they wanted to make sure was affordable for anybody that wanted to be able to use the technology. So that's really kind of been Spypoint's hallmark, is just building that value in, making it available to anybody that wants to be able to use it. And you can do an unlimited plan with Spypoint. Literally every photo that camera takes for an entire year for just $120. So your cell phone bill typically anymore seems to run more than that on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
But you got a trail camera out there that's doing it for the entire year at that price.
Well, and I had the exact same journey. I knew about cell cams, and I thought, yeah, that's great. And someday when I'm fabulously wealthy, I'll have one. And then Spypoint came along, and you talked about the premium plan, which is a great value. But what really caught my eyes is the basic camera itself comes with a plan that you don't have to pay extra for. And that's pretty amazing that you just set the thing up, you buy it, and the price isn't, over the top for even a decent trail camera. Plus you get this package of cell usage. So basically you set up your camera and you start getting pictures from your camera on your phone. It's crazy, and you don't have to pay any more.
Yeah, we tell people we've got plans from totally free to truly unlimited. And there's no other company out there that gives you the flexibility for plan that suits you. And Spypoint is the only cellular trail camera you can buy where you will never, not just for a trial period, but you will never have to pay for cellular packages if you don't want them. Spypoint offers a free plan. It's 100 photos a month. There's a lot of hunters. Obviously, that's not going to work if you've got a feeder on 100 acres and you're feeding turkeys and raccoons and deer and everything under the sun. Obviously 100 photos isn't going to get you very far. So maybe that's not a plan for everybody. But whether it's a less traveled area, or you're on a budget, but you'd like to have those 100 photos, it's not going to quit taking photos. It's just not going to send them to you. So you can still go pull the card, but until you use up those 100 photos, you can have those sent to you. And then, you kind of touched on it, and it's one of those things where trail camera users fall on a spectrum. There are, at one extreme, you've got guys that have cameras out 365 days a year, don't miss a day. Whether they are multi-season hunters or, property managers, and just want to keep an eye on. So shed hunting is getting ready to really kick off and that kind of thing. Okay, so that's what I'm watching now. Or I'm watching my, what's my coyote? Do I have a coyote problem I need to work on? Do I need to get out there and get trapping some stuff? Then it's fawn recruitment. How or do I have twins? Do I have triplets? Do I have some dry does that are out there? What's that look like? You've got those year-round people that aren't just waiting for hard velvet or hard antlers to show up. But then you've got folks that, they really, maybe they just hunt the gun opener and maybe one or two other days, and they only really run the cameras for 1 month or a few weeks. That it's still technology that they want to use, but then they've got this camera sitting around for a year, and a lot of folks will kind of find other creative ways to use it, especially because of that free plan. You're not getting charged every month that you're not using it, if that's all you want it for. And a lot of folks do use them for security purposes when they need kind of an an ad hoc security system. They don't necessarily want one all the time or think they need one all the time, but maybe you go on vacation or something like that, and you just want to help keep an extra eye out. You got a camera that can kind of step in and do that for you.
Exactly. And before we go further, let me go on record as a multi-year user now of the Spypoint system. There's no catch. It's just, if you're on the free plan, it doesn't cost you any extra. So that's pretty amazing. And the 100 photos, like you said, Trent, that, if you're a hardcore hunter and you want to see everything going on, you got a feeder going on and all that. Yeah, you may want to get the more extensive plan. But if you're like me, I would call myself a casual deer hunter, and I just kind of want to see what's going on in the area. 100 photos is absolutely fine. And as you also said, because I've had it out and suddenly, I've hit my 100 limit occasionally because maybe a deer was standing there, night after night and constantly getting its photo taken. They're still taking pictures, and you put a card in there, you're still getting all those pictures. It's just not notifying you in real time. So, again, before we go any further, if people are thinking that's too good to be true, cell's expensive, I'm telling you, if you just want 100 photos a month, you're good, and you pay the price for the camera, and you're done. So that's pretty cool, and as they say, a great value proposition. And I think that's why Spypoint kind of sticks out.
No doubt.
Let's take a very short break and talk about craft holsters. If you believe there's nothing better than the smell of freshly crafted leather, then check out Craft Holsters. Their custom leather holsters are your ticket to the ultimate concealed carry experience. They fit over 2,200 different guns. Visit craftholsters.com for more info. Well, let's move into the security aspect of it, because I think most folks kind of figured out the hunting aspects, and it's great for that. I've used them for that, and not just hunting too, but just wildlife observation. I've got a friend that's got some acreage, and I put a camera out, and he's in another state, and we've caught elk, we've caught coyote, we've caught mountain lion. It's crazy. You get a picture of a mountain lion from just a few feet away, staring right at the camera. It's like, wow. And they knew there was mountain lion in the area, but they've got hard proof now. We've caught quail and just all kinds of critters, mule deer, and this particular property is probably not going to be hunted, but it's pretty cool to just, as an outdoor person and an enthusiast, it's pretty cool to see that stuff that's running through there. So there's lots of uses, but let's go into the security part of it, because that's the other thing I've used mine for a lot. In my particular instance, when we were renovating the house we live in now, it was a several month process. So I had a camera sitting on the fireplace, and it was kind of funny. I knew when the contractors got there because it took a picture, and I never had anybody get in there after hours and do something they weren't supposed to, but I felt confident that had they done so, I would have been notified immediately. So it's a really useful tool beyond just hunting. Yeah,
So relatively early when I joined Spypoint, I was at a trade show and had a guy come up and relay a story where, he had them for deer hunting, but he wasn't someone that had them out year round. And he went on a vacation, and he had a sneaking suspicion that his neighbor was borrowing his propane tank.
Oh, really?
Off of his grill. And he went on a cruise, and it was a European. He was out of the country, but he was in a situation where he had Wi-Fi, so he could access the Spypoint app, and he kept an eye on it. He's watching, he's long. He had like a sliding patio door with his dining room table right next to it. So he had set the camera inside. So unless you were peeping through the window, you didn't really know it was there. It was kind of in a situation where it wasn't going to take a lot of, you alluded to, it's only 100 photos. So you put it on your patio and you've got some flowers or some plants or something that's going to blow in the wind. You may end up burning through those photos. It was a perfect situation for what he was wanting to do. Had it set on the table, pointing right at his grill. He gets a notification while he's on the boat, and he has pictures of his neighbor coming over and borrowing that propane tank.
Oh, gosh.
He said, all right, fantastic. Wow. He gets home from his trip, and he goes over to his neighbor, asks how things were, and asked him, is there anything anything you want to tell me, essentially. And neighbor, no, everything was fine. And he whips his phone out and shows him the picture and says, well, I was just hoping to be able to get my propane tank back.
Wow.
And he very quickly did. And that situation resolved itself relatively quickly for that gentleman.
Exactly. And I think I've told the story on the podcast before, but I'll share it with you. And it involves I believe a mutual friend of ours. I had a buddy that had a hunting cabin in the state of Missouri, down in the southern part. And I had hunted there at least once or twice, I think, with him. A beautiful cabin setting way back. And he had it finished, had all his trophies there, had some, family heirlooms. And it was really beautiful to the point he actually was thinking about retiring and trying to turn it into a lodge or a corporate retreat kind of thing. Well, anyway, one day he's out hunting and some yahoos pull into the field and actually shoot a doe that he was watching in the field from his tree stand. So he's the kind of guy, he chased him down and figured out who it was and called the conservation department. And they came out and they said, yeah, we know this guy. And he probably was doing it. And let's take a report. He said, now, just so you understand, you're an absentee landowner here. You live a couple hours away. This guy's a problem. And if you file charges against him, you may have repercussions. And he even said that they might even burn your cabin down. So my friend put up a couple trail cams. And obviously it didn't stop the cabin from burning down. But the guy came and kicked in the door and set the place on fire. And I think he stole a couple things. And he took the trail cam that was prominently posted on the front door. What he didn't know was the other couple of trail cams that were hidden around the property. And my friend got notified of it. And unfortunately, by then it was too late. The cabin was already on fire, and it's such a rural area, it burnt to the ground, to the foundation. But by the time he showed up and he pulled his trail cams down, and the police were there, of course, in the fire department, he had pictures of this guy. I mean, like just a portfolio. So that gentleman not only went to jail for burning the cabin, turns out he was one of these guys that I think he was a habitual offender. So I think he's going to do a lot of prison time over it. So the moral of the story is it didn't stop the cabin from burning down, but my friend at least got the satisfaction of the guy is in prison for a long time simply because my friend thought to put a couple of trail cams out.
It's in a situation like that, especially, it can be an invaluable tool. And it's, especially you talk about like a hunting cabin or something where there's a lot of other security camera systems out there, but when you factor in the free plan element and that whole portion of it in terms of value and in terms of flexibility and something that maybe you don't need it all the time, but if you wait till you need it, then it's too late, right? Like
right.
But if it's something you've already got there, and I've used them. Just a few of the places I've used them. So I had a camping trip somewhere I went, was kind of camping and had some meetings and stuff, and took my boat, but it was, it wasn't typically my boat's locked up in my garage. This is where I like to have it, but that's not always the case when you're on the road. I had to kind of just leave it sitting out in a parking lot, but by golly, I had a trail camera in there so that if anybody messed with it, I've done it when I've been hunting in unfamiliar places. I'll set one up in the inside of my truck in the back window, because typically if somebody comes and messes with your truck, they check around the bed and that kind of thing. So I've used it that way. I've used it around the house. Maybe I'm going on a work trip and wife and kids are home, but I want to know, see who's coming and going. And in case something silly happens, make sure to be able to capture that moment. And it's just, like I said, for that type of instance, it's just an absolutely invaluable tool to keep you connected to the place that you're wanting to monitor without it being something that you have to pay a big contract on or this ongoing maintenance thing. You can keep them going pretty easily. And then when you need them, they're there and you can put them to work.
Well, Trent, you've already blown my mind. I never thought about the boat thing because I do the same thing. I like to take my boat to Florida and all over the place. And I always try to park where I can see from the hotel, on my way down there, especially the interstate hotels. I've never had a problem, but it only takes once, and you got a lot of valuable equipment, radios and fishing gear sometimes. And I never thought of that. And I guarantee you that's one of those things I'm going to use my trail cam for going forward, that I can kind of keep an eye on that. And like you said, when you take a trip, I'm going to be taking a trip soon, and I've got cameras. I got doorbell cameras, and I got an interior camera on the house. But for the areas of the house that aren't covered, I'm going to set up my trail cam. Again, just so I know that's that extra layer of security. And I think that's important to point out, that I don't necessarily, and I don't think you guys recommend that this is your sole means of security for securing your home or your barn or whatever. But the point you made, that if you're somebody that uses a trail cam anyway, this is a really good auxiliary to that. And again, since it's operates off the cell network, like we were just talking, you can have it watch your truck, you can have it watch your boat while you're on the road. That's a great idea that I hadn't thought about.
Yeah. So many of those, your home system, if it needs to run off Wi-Fi, that's fine. But whether you're backpacking and you got a tent camp somewhere and you're wanting to keep an eye on, or whatever the case may be, as long as there's a cellular signal there. And that's honestly, that's probably one of the bigger questions that we get, or, misunderstanding, maybe too strong of a word, but, you get a camera and you get the free plan, but it doesn't come with a cell tower. So, if it's, you are still at the mercy of the cellular networks. That's not something that any cell cam manufacturer has control over. We are subject to coverage and availability of those cellular networks. But, just even in the last 10 years, a lot of those places that used to be cell holes have opened up and have pretty decent coverage and can keep you connected. It's, sometimes I lament how hard it is to get away from cell phone coverage anymore.
You and me both.
There are instances where, specifically the camera element, it's nice to have that little bit of peace of mind of not that the camera can necessarily make you whole itself, but should something happen, should you need documentation for something that's happened, it's a really good way to do that. And like you're talking about, one, I would never recommend one. I wouldn't recommend one for a hunter. I wouldn't recommend, because if it's visible, it's not uncommon for somebody to see that they've probably been captured on a camera and then take the camera. But you've got multiple, you can, if one is really easy to find, maybe make another harder to find or harder to get to, or whatever the case may be. And, the idiots will usually out themselves pretty quickly. Oh, yeah, I got that camera. Well, you missed the other three. So ha, enjoy that.
Well, in my friend's case, they took the cell camera, but that alerted my friend, and he just had some of his normal cameras that aren't cell cameras. Those were the ones that were hidden, and they did a fine job. So, that's a great idea. Now, let's get back to the cell thing. I will say, over the years, I've been using cell cameras now. Yes, it's gotten so much better. It's actually, you don't have that much of a problem unless you are really, really way back in the boonies, because they have a larger antenna than your cell phone, and you can put them up, as high as you can reach, which that's part of it too. So the height of the antenna above the terrain, and you can generally find enough signal that it'll work. But the other thing, and I didn't realize this, I've sat through your presentation here, a year ago at a conference we were at, there's two flavors of cell tower, and you guys have now addressed that with one of your products.
Yeah. So, it's different cell carriers talk to their devices slightly differently. So for years, and if you go look at most cellular cameras, they're going to have two, it's going to change by brand. At Spypoint, we call them carrier models. And so one of them for us is called Nationwide, which is basically everybody except Verizon, because they talk to their devices a little bit differently. So it's not just not just straight AT&T. You've got other carriers, some of the larger regionals. Quite a few carriers are connected to that nationwide model. It's not Verizon. And then we've got our VPN cards that will talk to the Verizon network and maybe some other things as well. So you've got those two options. And that was always a question. Well, which one do I need? And especially if you're going to an area that you're not familiar with, it can kind of be a guessing game. Our recommendation is always, obviously firsthand information is best. If you know somebody that's there, hey, do you have cell signal when you're at your camp? Yeah, signal's no problem. Well, great. Whose coverage do you have? That's the best way. You can look at the coverage maps, but, cellular signal is not consistent and can vary, within a very small, moving 5 or 10 feet can make a difference, but over time, cell signal changes too. We've all taken phone calls in an area where we've never dropped a call and somehow magically dropped a call. Like that just happens. So one thing that we did, we introduced a new camera last year. It was the Flex. And the Flex was the first true dual SIM configuration that would automatically monitor the quality of the cell phone signal. And if it needed to change, and it found that it was advantageous to change networks, it had both SIM cards installed. And it was constantly monitoring that network performance to be able to look at it and say, okay, we may be anchoring to this tower right now, but if for some reason, if that tower goes down or signal quality degrades, it's automatically going to check that other carrier SIM card and see if there's a delta there, if there's an improvement to be made, and it'll automatically make that switch. So in the past, you had some companies that would send you both SIM cards, but you had to figure out which one you wanted and then make a call to customer service. And we just eliminated all of that. So It just automatically was doing that work for you. You never had to activate or deactivate a card or manually switch it. It was doing all of that for you in the Flex.
Absolutely. It's really set and forget kind of thing. And it wasn't a huge problem before, but like you said, it may involve activating a different system or something. And now with the Flex, you just put it up and it works if you have cell service. And like I said, in especially with both flavors of carrier, it's pretty rare now to get someplace where you don't have some kind of cell service. So it works.
It can be done, but it's tough to find.
And one final quick break for Ipal. Here's a simple product for all iron sight shooters. Simply attach the static cling Ipal peep sight to your eyewear and get a focused sight picture. Plain and simple, this inexpensive aperture resolves difficult vision issues. Go to ipalusa.com to get your kit today. Well, I was researching, doing a little show prep here and kind of looking at some stuff online. And I got to say, one of the more intriguing ways of using a trail cam for security was a guy that has Birdhouse plans. And I thought, that's interesting because we're getting ready to put up a privacy fence around our backyard. They're going to put that up here very soon. And we had a smaller section of privacy fence that had a nice birdhouse on it. So I took that off and I'm going to mount it. And I got to thinking, well, the birds can find some place to live. I think I'll modify that birdhouse to be to fit my trail cam, because I already thought that I would use it out there because there shouldn't be too many people coming in my backyard. And that's a blind spot to the various cameras I've got. So if you decide to get into my backyard, which would be a really bad idea, but if you decide to, smile for the birdhouse because you'll be watched. Have you heard of some other interesting ways or places or techniques for mounting cameras?
The birdhouse one is new to me. It makes sense. You'll want to make sure that obviously the lens and the motion sensor have an opening to work on, and you may want to make sure that the way it's mounted doesn't inhibit the performance. But that's certainly, anytime you can hide something in plain sight, right? Like that's the gray man of cellular trail camera usage, concealed carry cellular camera, CCCC, secure. That's fantastic. I like that idea. A lot of plays. Anybody that's familiar with hunting has probably seen some of these like high mounts. So you get on a ladder initially and kind of have an anchor that you screw in, and then you can use any sort of like an extendable paint pole, and there's just this like locking ball that you can kind of press it into place then. So it's, that's always the concern, is you can put the camera up, but if somebody takes the camera, whether it's cellular or not, it doesn't do you a lot of good, depending on, you may still get a photo out. A photo may still be transmitted depending on your setting preferences, to where even if it's taken, you may still get a look at that person that did it before they took it. But just making it unreachable is a common one. I'm so stuck on the Birdhouse thing. Like it's genius on its face that I can't even. That's a good one. It's that usually hunters aren't getting that creative. It's the security. There's some of the security folks that I talk to, but it's typically putting it inside facing out through like a patio door or something like that, so that even if they're into an area where they shouldn't be, the camera's not accessible. Whether I've heard foyer table looking out a front door. I've heard patio, dining room looking out a patio door, that kind of thing. But no, that level of creativity is rarely seen.
Well,
sadly.
And the plant, he was pointing that out, that you got to make sure the sensor's clear. And if you look at this Birdhouse, you've got, something's not right with that. But by that point, your picture's taken. So I thought that was pretty ingenious. But when the house was under construction, I just set mine on our mantle. We have a beautiful flagstone fireplace that takes up the whole corner of the room. And if you look at it, sure, you see it sitting there, but it's camouflage. It kind of blended in with the rocks. And again, I think people would be captured, and I would be notified long before they realized, oh no, my picture's been taken. So,
well, and in a situation like that, if you've got it posted up outside your house, like that's a defensive stance and a defensive placement. And there's, even the idiot criminals know how to case a house and, do that initial reconnaissance to determine, is this a hard target or a soft target? Mm-hmm. And anytime you can have a security device that alerts when they think they've already made their determination and then they find out something otherwise, you're better off. It's that gray man concept. If you're, I'll get on my soapbox. I know you guys just did this not that long ago, and I loved it. The whole idea of open carry, kind of the same thing with your camera placement. If you've got cameras posted up everywhere and a Ring doorbell, okay, but all you're doing is letting someone else determine, okay, well, that's just not the way I'm going to go.
Yeah.
They can't have a Ring doorbell on every window. Sometimes you may be just a little bit better off not maybe showing it off quite as much, but then making sure that when and if the perimeter is infiltrated, well, now it's too late. You walk through my living room, I got you on the mantle 6 times, and it can look decorative. It doesn't, I'm a trail, you come into my office, I've got a couple that sit on the bookshelf behind my computer. So if I'm on a Zoom call or whatever, okay, trail camera guy. But I think most people are going to look at it in that way and think it's some sort of decoration, not, well, what kind of idiot just puts a trail camera up on their mantle? That doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you can outsmart the idiot sometimes.
Exactly. Well, cool stuff. And again, I highly recommend Spypoint cameras. I've used them. I've used a couple of models. I've used them in the field. They work. They just work. And there's, again, no extra fee. I think the first time you introduced me to them, Trent, I'm like, okay, what's the catch? What's the deal? Mm-hmm. And you're like, no, listen to me for the 4th time. There's no catch. Yep. And that's absolutely true. So pretty amazing. But how do people find out more about Spypoint's cameras?
Obviously, you can go to any of the social media channels. We're pretty much anywhere. Search Spypoint camera. You'll find us. Spypoint.com. You can go to spypoint.com/flex if you want to learn more about the flex, or the new model for this year that we introduced, there's an additional level of no catch. We've added an integrated solar panel and onboard battery to it. So now you could run a trail camera on the free 100 photo plan and also never pay for batteries over the life of it as well, because it's using an integrated solar panel and battery that's all in one unit. It's not a 12 volt running to a solar panel and wires. It's all one unit, and obviously wouldn't work in an enclosed birdhouse for you. But if you've got somewhere else that may work, that's there. You can go find all the details on that at spypoint.com or through us at social media.
Well, great stuff. And again, I highly recommend. And if you're a hunter, you get them for hunting, and then you can keep track of your backyard, your barn, your house, or your boat. That's my big takeaway from here. So Trent Marsh, the editorial manager at Spypoint, thank you very much for joining us.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brent.
I hope my talk with Trent Marsh gave you some great ideas on better ways to secure your property using trail cams. If you enjoyed this episode, here's a couple more to check out. How about episode number 94, where I talk about the 50 rules of personal safety? There's episode number 126 called Safe Queens with Tom McHale, and episode number 170, Game Warden Tales with Larry Case. If there's a topic you want to hear, someone you'd like us to interview, or you want to share your thoughts, please drop me a line at editor@gunsmagazine.com. As always, you can subscribe to us on your favorite podcast directory, such as Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and several others. And you can always get the latest episode on YouTube and at gunsmagazine.com. At the same time, please subscribe to the Gun Cranks audio podcast on those same directories, or you can watch it at the Gun Cranks YouTube channel. I'd also ask you to visit our great sister publications, American Handgunner Magazine at AmericanHandgunner.com, AmericanCop.com, and don't forget our numerous special editions available for sale on our websites and at Amazon. Before we go, I'd also like to remind you to visit our sponsor, 4 Patriots. You can find out more about their food kits and other preparedness supplies at 4patriots.com. That's the number 4, the word Patriots, and .com. And please don't forget our supporting sponsor, Creedmoor Sports. Visit them at creedmoorsports.com. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. For the entire staff at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.